Mercury are still 44-0, and I'm still going to be insufferable about it. What is up, Mercury gang? Welcome back to the PHNX Mercury podcast. I am your host, Erika Day, and I'm joined by PG1, QB1, on and off the field, in and out of the studio, on and off the court, Stephen Garner. Stephen, how you doing on this fine Thursday morning?
I'm doing great. Mercury starting off the season 2-0. A lot of fun stuff happening on the court, and for the people that like to watch things that happen on the court, it's been a lot of fun stuff to watch across the entire W. Getting close to through the first week of the season. So all is well in my world. How about you? How you doing?
It was a good day. I will be honest. On my drive up to Phoenix this morning, I saw a cow on the side of the road, not fenced. I had to call the police on my way here because of a loose cow. And if that's not the most Rena, Arizona sentence I've ever said on the show, I don't know what is. The farmlands were out, quite literally. And when I called the police, I had to say, I know this sounds fake, but there was a cow that y'all need to get before it gets somebody else. It's going to be a gigantic safety hazard, literally on the 2-lane road. So, yeah, thank God for sheriff's department for going to deal with that. I don't know how you would even deal with that, but then also huge shouts for Noah operating the Mack today. It's a big Thursday here in PHNX Studios. So huge shouts to Noah on that. But yeah, the chat is correct. Dubs in the chat. All we do is win no matter what. And the Mercury are 2-0. The vibes are up in the Valley right now. Where do you want to start with this, Stephen? Do you want to just go through the game yesterday? It was a good win by the Mercury. It ended up being a little closer than maybe we thought it would be in the third quarter, but it was a really good game from the Mercury.
Yeah, we can start there. What were your initial thoughts from the game?
My first thought is that Alyssa Thomas is that girl. She does it all, and it doesn't matter what happens to her in the game. She's willing to come back in and put it all on the line for a W. And on a team like this that is currently short-handed and is without their franchise player in Kahleah, they need someone like that, and they've got it in Alyssa Thomas. She's done it all for the Mercury on both sides of the ball, defense and offense, and she's just out there getting them wins over, 2 games into the season, and both times you can attribute the wins to AT's, ball movement as well as her defense. It starts with her.
Yeah, Alyssa is sensational. I don't know if there's any other way to put it. Quite honestly, I'll start with the defense. The Mercury have given up the least points on average so far this season. It's only been 2 games, so obviously you want to apply that context. And teams like Indiana, or specifically even more so the Liberty, only played once so far. So there's not too much to glean from that, but the fact that they're already off to a start where they're giving up 72.5 points on average through these first 2 games, and stemming from everything that we heard from them speaking about what they're going to be looking to set their identity with, being the defensive end of the floor. They're doing very much that. In these 2 games, I mentioned 72.5 points. They're plus 12.5 through these 2 games on average, and they're only giving up, their field goal percentage is 37.4 defensively. So teams are not having fun operating against them. They're not getting the shots that they want, and they're not making the shots that they ultimately end up taking. You apply that to also them, the amount of steals and deflections and block shots that they're getting, and you see a team that said they want to be the best defensive team in the league, and through these first 2 games has looked very much like that.
Well, and to your point, they have the best defensive rating that they've had since the inception of the team, 77.5. So, I mean, they're getting it done. And also to your same point, Kelsey Plum, who the Mercury had to face yesterday in the Sparks, I mean, yes, on the stat sheet, I think she finished with 25 points, but through the, first 27 minutes of the game, she had 11 points. And so, you know, the Mercury were making things extremely uncomfortable for her and making her take shots that she wouldn't normally take. And, you know, in a system that kind of operates around Kelsey Plum, that's exactly what you want to do to get stops and get the dub ultimately versus a team like the Sparks.
Yeah, the guards, they have to do a better job of guarding without fouling as a group. But generally speaking, their defense in terms of defending to scheme against elite level guards, obviously in game one with Skylar Diggins, they did a great job of sending them the pockets that they wanted to send them to. They take away the foul portion. I think they do an even better job of just breaking their game rhythm, which is ultimately what you want to do against these guards that are going to find ways to score regardless of what you do or don't do. So they've been doing a great job there. I think the value continues to be in the guards being able to do a solid job, but them also having Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally just roaming around defensively. And as a team, their help has been sensational. They've been even better as a team with those two, but also with players like Westbeld as well as Kalani Brown walling up at the rim, just contesting with verticality and not fouling and doing that part in particular. And I think that's as important as anything. If you can defend with activity, that's awesome. But when you play with activity, it lends yourself to fouling. And if you've got teams in a bonus and shoot more free throws than you, that's a way for them to shrink that margin that your defensive impact might have. So the fact that they're doing their job that well collectively speaks a ton.
Well, and Nate talked about that intellectual aggression right before the game yesterday, and I feel like we probably should have asked him, you know, if he felt like he saw that in the game yesterday. But at certain points I felt like I did, but then at other points it felt like they were kind of regressing back to the fouling. But at the same time, with the exception of Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally, we've got a pretty young and inexperienced team. So it's kind of to be expected with some growing pains with the, you know, Catherine Westbeld and Lexi Held. But, you know, from the rookies, it was a pretty stand-up performance from all of them on the court yesterday.
Yeah, especially with the way that the Sparks were defending them. So Alyssa Thomas, Satou Sabally, anytime they had a touch, the Sparks were loading up the blocks and the elbows. So they were at the corners of the paint, down low and up top. And they were working to be in the gaps early. And whenever one of those two got a post touch or a mid-post touch, they were sending double teams from the baseline. So the first quarter was a little up and down. And once those two got a beat on, okay, this is what they're doing defensively, this is where their double team rotations are coming from, how can we kind of counter that? That's when it started to get fun. And we started to see the Mercury move the ball. 22 points on 28 assists. Nate said he desired to see more in terms of their game flow in the half court offensively, but if we're speaking to how well the ball moved and how they countered coverages that they were seeing, as they progressed through the game from the first quarter, maybe the halfway point throughout the rest of the game, it got better. The decisions were a lot more snappy. They started getting shots being made from Monique as well as obviously from Kit on her birthday, her knocking down multiple threes and playing off of the attention that Satou Sabally and Alyssa Thomas continue to generate. You already see the template for success with her. And I think them just being able to be so adaptable with their offense over the course of games in respect to the unique ways that defenses have to go about attempting to guard them just speaks to the shared IQ part. And I think that also speaks to the preparedness of the team because you don't get to those points this early in the season without having a coaching staff that has you prepared for whatever type of challenges a defense might try to throw at you.
Well, and to go back to your point about the 20 assists, only 12 turnovers, and it's been, I mean, even through the preseason, they had 20-plus turnovers in every single game they've had so far. So, I mean, it's a huge sign of improvement from this team. And then to flip that number on its head and have 20 assists instead of 20 turnovers, I feel like it's a good sign of what's to come. And, you know, we've talked about it, but all of this without their star player in Kahleah Copper.
And I would take away probably 3 or at least 2 of those turnovers. So 12, bring that down to like 10 or maybe even 9. If players aren't rewarded for not being able to guard Alyssa Thomas and reverting to just flopping and being rewarded for flopping, if you take those away and you add the fact that they were scoring and they were on these double-digit runs over the course of these games, I think the turnover complexion looks completely differently. They put up more points on the board, and they also take away possessions from the opponents in doing that. So I think they'll be having a conversation with the league about now back-to-back games where Alyssa's getting to her spots legally, players can't stay in front of her, they're late, and they just get to a spot, flop, and officials are just calling it an offensive foul. You only have so many challenges you can use. You don't want to just use them on the exact same play time and time again.
Yeah.
So if the officiating gets up to the level that it needs to be, I think the turnover totals that we've seen through these first 2 regular season games, if we're talking about comprehensively between game 1 and game 2, you could probably take away 5 of those turnovers that they have. And again, their complexion for their offense looks completely different if that's the case.
Well, and just real quick, while we're talking about these challenges, Nate Tibbetts did lose a challenge yesterday. So that is 1 for 1 on the Girl Dad counter as of right now for the Phoenix Mercury podcast. Be sure to subscribe because you can't get content like that in particular anywhere else. He challenged an out of bounds play that probably shouldn't have been the challenge he used, if I'm entirely truthful. And I kind of felt that same way about the challenge he used in the first game, where it's like, okay, this is an out of bounds play. Like you can change the course of a basketball game with a different type of challenge later in the game, and he chose to use it in out of bounds plays, which is what it is. But he ended up losing. I heard from multiple people that were watching the broadcast from home that the angle appeared that it should have been Mercury basketball, but the officials do what the officials do, and so now the boy is 1 for 1 on the year, and I'll look for him to improve on that counter for sure.
I'll say though, with the challenges, you might not always agree with the context in which it's taking place, but look at the timing of the game. Are the Mercury on a run? Are they trying to close a quarter? Are they trying to stop a run from an opponent? Those type of timing to where you're gaining a possession versus losing a possession matter in terms of the flow of the game. So whether you agree with whether that particular play should be challenged or not, you got to apply the context of what's the game flow looking like, and that'll probably give you a better gauge as to not just his mindset, but his team's mindset that he consults with in those moments.
For sure. And then to kind of go back to the defensive part of it, the rebounding yesterday, I would say it was a struggle, but when you have Azurá Stevens, and doing what she was doing in yesterday's game, you can say it was a struggle, but the Mercury were missing a lot of shots, to Nate Tibbetts' point after the game. And it kind of put them in good position to create possessions for the Sparks. And I don't think that this will be a continuous issue with this team, but because, to our points from the offseason, I think it's going to be a rebounding by committee type of situation with this particular roster. But yesterday they obviously got out rebounded by the Sparks. Do you think that's going to be an issue in the future for this roster?
I don't think so. I don't know if the rebounding margin is something that they want to be dominant in per se.
Yeah.
They just need to be good enough. And I mean, Azurá had 17, but outside of Erika, no one else had more than 3. So somebody's got to grab rebounds. Like, shots are going to be missed.
Right.
So I don't think that 17 was like a game changing type of 17. I think her 23 points were more impactful in the game than her rebounds were. Again, just because someone has to grab the rebounds if you're missing shots. So if she's playing center, the Mercury are switching and doing things on defense, she's going to be in the paint. She's the tallest player on the court unless Kahleah Brown is on the floor. So it naturally lends itself to that. That's not to diminish Azurá's impact, but I'm saying that 17 rebounds didn't have like a dominant type of impact on the game. And I think Nate kind of alluded to that in it. But something else Nate also mentioned post-game yesterday was that although Satou had 25 points and, she got to that number again, not unlike she did in game 1, she didn't have her best game.
Right.
And I don't feel like he was wrong in that at all. I think he wants her to take more threes and make more threes, for one. I think some opportunities were there that she didn't necessarily take. She erred on taking it to the basket or moving it to someone else. She only had 4 3-point attempts. He said he wants her closer to 10. So there's a 6 attempt difference there at bare minimum that he's going to want to see more of. If she takes 6 more threes, I bet she makes 1 to 2 more. So that's the type of shot profile that he wants her to have. On the flip side, though, with her erring on getting to the basket more, she did get to the free throw line 15 times. 15 times. And for comparison, the Sparks got to the free throw line 26 times. So she got there significantly in terms of volume, and she was ever present there. She knocked down 12 of those. So she didn't get as much scoring from the field as Nate may have wanted from her per se. But I think her being able to be versatile in her approach and not have to be lenient on one specific dynamic of her shot profile speaks a ton to her unicorn ways. You take away something or maybe one part of her game is not working, that does not mean she just won't have impact on the game. And she also had 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block as well. So
Two AV14's point in the chat. Loxa should be starting over Sammy Whitcomb. Do you think that this starting lineup we've seen with Monique Akomakani, Sammy Whitcomb, Satou Sabally, Catherine Westbeld, and Alyssa Thomas is what we're going to see the entirety of the time that Natasha Mack in particular is out? Or do you think that there's changes to come? Because there have been, changes to the roster since even you and I last spoke on this podcast. And, with Kit in particular, and I guess Musa as well, they've been in the city of Phoenix for less than 72 hours. So do you think that there's changes to come because of the newness surrounding the roster? Or do you think that we're going to see consistency with the starting lineup?
no, I don't think we're going to see any changes to that starting lineup. I think they play well. I think they have dynamics that mesh well over the course of games as well. And to that point, looking at what they want to do on offense while also upholding what they want to do even more so with their identity on defense, having Sammy out there helps with that. Having Monique out there helps with that. Having Kat out there helps with that in particular as well. Kat is able to take on matchups that allow for Satou and Alyssa to play the style of defense that Nate wants them to. He wants them to be able to take on individual matchups and to help in pick and roll and things like that. But he also wants those two to be present as help defenders, where if someone gets beat on a drive, let's just say Monique, who's having to guard these elite all-time great guards through her first 2 games, she's tasked with a lot. You're not going to be successful every time. Defense is an imperfect job. And if you can just do enough, and then you also have these additional layers of your defense to where, okay, congratulations, Skylar. Congratulations, Kelsey. You got past Monique. Now I present to you Alyssa Thomas. What are you going to do with that? If it's not Alyssa, maybe it's Satou. What are you going to do with that? What about if they switch onto them as they drive? Little things like that help to make their defense only allow 72.5 points through 2 games. Those things matter. And in addition to that, the shots that they're being dared to take from defenses, and especially last night, the shots that they were making, all of those things add up, the IQ, the chemistry part in particular, and they want to establish some type of continuity in this time where they are without 2 of their better players, 2/5 of their team starting lineup. So I don't see any starting lineup changes coming. I don't think they need starting lineup changes either. And I think these first 2 games definitely showed it.
Yeah, I mean, to go further into that point, Monique Akomakana, she has just been a completely unprecedented guard for this team. She is doing things that when Nate yesterday in postgame was talking about their rookies on this team that he wasn't sure if they were going to make the team, I feel like he was kind of talking about all of them. And Monique Akomakana has surprised everyone in how ready she is for the moment. And she never, backs down, to your point, of guarding the best player on the team, whether that's Kelsey Plum or Skylar Diggins. And those are 2 very tall tasks to be taking on in your first and second games in the WNBA respectively. So, hats off to her. She's making a huge difference on this team. And then when the role players behind her come in after her, they're, keeping up the good job as well. And, that goes down to Kit last night, but, other people in the behind layers in game 1 as well, and Lexi Held and, Sevgi Uzun, who's been pretty good as well.
Yeah. With Mo in particular, she knocked down 3 threes. She took 6 attempts. She took significantly more shots and aggression even more so than anything else. Her approach in terms of finding pockets to score was a lot more apparent in game 2 than it was in game 1. Game 1, it felt very much like I'm still feeling things out, kind of walking on eggshells in terms of not wanting to take the offense off script, but also trying to make sure as a point guard that she's getting the ball to the 2 best players on the team when it was that she was initiating. So I would love to ask her about the mental approach to game 2 in comparison to game 1. But I think the impact on the team, it was loud. And her 11 points last night, as well as her 3 assists, spoke to the aggression point. And like I said, took 6 3-point attempts. The context in which they came was very much the style and shot profile that Nate is going to want for her to kind of chip in, taking those 6 attempts to help them get to that 33 attempts that they did take in last night's game. And obviously the 3 makes is equally as important as the volume. But I think her going 4 for 8 from the field in general speaks to just the aggression point. she's not just a shooter. She can very much get downhill against most matchups. She'll be able to kind of turn a corner and go get a paint touch. And if she's getting to the rim, and now you got Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally and eventually Kahleah Copper playing off a defense that's rotating that didn't come from one of those three setting that for everybody else, now you're talking about the layers of their offense to where it's just hard to guard. It's hard to guard. And the matchups and things like that come with it too.
Well, and with Mo in particular, she's out there and as, you know, positionless as this team is, she is playing point guard and she's not making the wrong decisions. And when you're a rookie, an undrafted rookie, no less, like it's a big role to fill in games 1 and 2 in your entire WNBA career. And you're playing with all-time greats in Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally.
Yeah. That part is definitely relevant. And I almost forgot about a point that I wanted to bring up with Monique in particular. So we talk about the matchups part, and we're looking at in the fourth quarter in particular. But they did it over the course of the game as well. Honestly, they started the game with a little bit of it too. If they're giving Monique opportunities to just catch and shoot, those are shots that she has to either take, make a quick decision to pass or drive off of, and do that consistently. And I think she was in that space early on. I think she may have took 2 3-point attempts in the first quarter, probably within the first couple of possessions, quite honestly. And I think she made her very first 3-point attempt.
I think she was the first shot of the game, and she made it.
Yeah, and it was off of Alyssa Thomas. She got doubled. They shifted over to AT, and she was wide open. She didn't hesitate. She let it fly. And then you get to, especially in the fourth quarter, Alyssa is going crazy, and it's the Sparks trying to cross match. So no different than we talked about last season with Natasha Cloud guarding post players and being able to kind of do a solid job there. The Sparks tried to sneak Odyssey Sims onto Alyssa Thomas, and Alyssa was not having it, first of all. But in addition to Alyssa not having it, there's another layer to it that's outside of Alyssa having the ball, and that's Monique. Monique's being guarded by Erika Hamby. Erika Hamby, the 4 or the 5 for the Sparks, depending on how you look at her and Azurá Stevens. Monique can't allow for teams to just allow them to put centers on her or power forwards on them, even if they are versatile defenders like Azurá and Erika Hamby. She has to be aggressive and not allowing that to be a disadvantage for them. And I think that her being aggressive, in addition to Alyssa Thomas just not being guardable at all, helps with that as well. And AT doing what she did in the fourth quarter, they put Sims on her and she goes and scores back-to-back buckets from the elbow, I think speaks to just the layers of their offensive approach that they can have. Doesn't always have to be the pick and roll, which we spoke a lot about over the last weekend, some change. It also doesn't have to be post-ups in particular. She can play through the elbows and they can kind of respace around that and still score.
As we've been through 2 games with the team, both home games. We've seen them up close and personal. Have your opinions about the ceiling or the floor for this team really changed through 2 games, or is it kind of the same as it would have been if I would have asked you this question 2 weeks ago?
It's. I think the floor has raised and the ceiling is still what it was before. A team that should be contending for a championship being the ceiling, and the floor being a team that's middle of the pack. I think they, with this 2-0 start, and what I've kind of harped on was that they needed to get out the gates
hot
in a sharp fashion, regardless of what the process might look like. Just being able to get those wins early and learn from those games, and then be able to kind of have a leg up on the competition by just getting out the gate strong, I think was important. And if I said they could be top 4, I don't think that's out the realm. I said I think I had them around that 4 or 5 range in terms of our preseason predictions. Right now, they're vying for a top 3 spot and undefeated in doing so right now. So I don't think that's a space that they can't sustain in. It's just a matter of how sharp is their game plan and the learning and everything that comes with that. But they're in a great space right now.
Did y'all hear that? Stephen just said he thinks they could stay in that undefeated headspace.
Top 3 space.
Talk so nice to me. Happy Thursday to me. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to see how long I can keep this undefeated streak up. You know what I mean? Like, and as long as it keeps going, I'm going to keep feeding my agenda. You know what I mean? And it works out for me and the show. So, with this roster, now that they're up to 10 that are not injured and playing with the team, do you think that there's going to be more roster moves to be made, or do you think that this roster we are seeing right now is the final version of the Phoenix Mercury?
I don't know. I think they consider other things, but it, like Nate mentioned last week in the video we played, it has to make sense in terms of the fit, and are they bringing something that adds value to everything that they're already establishing in terms of their style of play. So are they bringing somebody in that identifies with the defensive end of the court? Are they bringing in somebody that can space the floor and knock down shots, but also put the ball on the deck and play with IQ on the offensive end to uphold the principles that they're looking to establish and play in a complementary fashion off of eventually Kahleah Copper, but obviously Satou and Alyssa with that. So there's a lot of factors involved with it. I imagine if they bring another player in, it's probably someone in the guard group just to kind of help to add a little bit more depth there. But it's kind of hard to predict those things considering we don't know what injuries might potentially take place down the line and things like that. But at this moment in time, they're capped off in terms of roster space. So they would have to cut another player if they wanted to add external talent.
Well, and everyone on the roster, with the exception of obviously the injured players, played more than 10 minutes, with the exception of Musa, who's brand new. I believe has literally been in the Valley for like less than 24 hours.
Mhm.
So I wasn't super shocked by that. But the minutes distribution is obviously going to look a lot different in a week than it does right now. In what ways do you think the rotation is going to change over the next couple of weeks?
I don't know if the rotation changes much just because you already have players like Sammy as well as Cat starting. And, obviously when the team gets back healthy, I imagine that those two are your super subs in terms of your players getting the most minutes from the reserve unit.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as shifts to the rotation, I don't know if any really take place. I think it's more so just them trying to, again, find that continuity to kind of play a similar style to where players can kind of predict when their minutes are going to come in terms of when they're going into the rotation, and you can kind of build out some chemistry and continuity from there.
Well, and chemistry is something we've talked a lot about, but it feels like this team is already at a level of chemistry that we didn't see for like half the season last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's all in my head and with the eye test, but it feels like they are playing, the read and react style of basketball that Nate Tibbetts wants requires a certain level of chemistry in order to be productive. And we're seeing that, time and time again through these two games. So I understand everyone's hesitancies and their worries about the chemistry on this team, but it's also, to me, it's a worry that I had 2 weeks ago and not a worry I've had through the last two games.
Well, my rebuttal to the people that are having questions about their continuity is how many teams had that going into this past season, whether it be from the head coaching spot or the literal players on the roster. And if we're talking about the teams that are in the contending realm, Indiana had it. Obviously, the caveat being, though, that they had a brand new coach. So that even comes with a learning curve in and of itself, even if they do have a lot of returning players plus veteran talents in Natasha Howard and DeWanna Bonner and Sophie Cunningham, et cetera, that came into their team context. There's still a lot of learning that they have to go through. You can say, obviously, the New York Liberty, but they added Rebecca Gardner, who's going to stake a significant claim to their main rotation, as well as Natasha Cloud, two brand new players to their context. You can say the same thing about Las Vegas Aces, but they lost one piece of their entire organization since they went to Vegas that's been there since they got there in Kelsey Plum, and they bring in, obviously, Jewel Lloyd with that. So there's a lot of changes in addition to the entire bench underneath Becky Hammond being completely different and new this season. So we're talking about all of these teams, and the one team that has true consistency will be the Minnesota Lynx.
They do feel like they have the most minimal change throughout everybody else. I mean, with the exception
all they added was Jessica Shepard.
And then Kayla McBride's absence obviously affects him in a certain type of level. But I would think she'll be back pretty soon. So I'm hopeful for that. Can't have WNBA too long without that K-Mac sniper out there.
For sure. But to the point that I'm making, though, so if you talk about the Mercury not having this chemistry and continuity that you might be wanting early in the season, my rebuttal is how many teams have that? And the answer lies in the context that I just provided. All of these teams deemed in the contending realm having so much newness. If you want to throw Atlanta in there, they got a brand new coach and multiple brand new players. You want to throw Seattle in there, they have a ton of brand new players in their team, in addition to players that they were looking to rely on that are out for the rest of the season, unfortunately. So there's not a lot of continuity in that respect across the entire league outside of just one team.
Well, I want to answer AV14's question and even more Mercury talk when we get back from this quick break. Mountain America Credit Union. Everybody needs a checking account. Mountain America Credit Union is committed to helping out more than just their 1 million members, 100 branches throughout the West. Everyone needs a checking account, and you can get the account with built-in benefits. Mountain America's My Style checking account has perks just for you. You can enjoy restaurant deals, mobile phone protection, telehealth access, identity protection, loan rate discounts, offers on travel and events, and so much more. Make My Style your lifestyle at Mountain America Credit Union. You can visit macu.com/mystyle to apply. Membership is required based on eligibility. Some benefits require a no-cost registration or activation. Terms, conditions, and exclusions do apply. If you've been on my Twitter, you know I'm a big fan of these people over at Circle K. I got gas this morning, very, very, very early in the morning, approximately about 12:30 in the morning, for $1.99. Shout out to my Inner Circle Rewards discount. In 2025, I'm getting gas for $1.99. Are we serious right now? So it's a fuel day today. I never have a show on a fuel day, so I'm so excited to be able to make sure that all of you guys are informed about this deal. All you have to do is be an Inner Circle Rewards member. You download the app, put in your phone number, put in your email, and then boom, you've got access to the Inner Circle Rewards. It's 40 cents off today from 4 to 7 p.m. if you're in Arizona or Nevada. And literally all you have to do is be an Inner Circle member. It's pretty easy. You can stop in, get any size Polo Pop for 79 cents while you're there. It's basically the best deal in all of Tucson. So be sure to hit up Circle K, join the Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit circlek.com for details. And I said we were going to answer AV14's question about minutes when Ka returns. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously going to have to be some sort of shift because Ka is going to play between 25 and 30 minutes, I would think, for the team, especially, you know, she's not going to come back till a month or so into the season. So even though I don't want to admit it, I'm sure their record looks a lot different than it does right now. Mm-hmm. And so how do you think the minutes shift once the starters and Ka and Mack are back in the rotation?
So Kahleah played 32 minutes last season. This season she's gonna play around the same amount. So that's gonna take away minutes from Sammy a little bit. I think it's gonna be the entire guard group taking a minutes hit in some capacity. Because you have a big three construct, so you can have at least two of those three players, at worst one of those three players on the court in multiple lineup iterations. So imagine all three of those players getting around 30 to 32 minutes a game. Everybody's going to take a hit from that. And then you add, obviously, Mack on top of that. That's where things get a little murky, but no pun intended. But the fun part about that is you've seen what Kat Westbeld can do in an expanded role where you're not just giving her more minutes, but she's also being asked to do more in terms of her game-to-game, just kind of boxes to check off. Same thing with Sammy Wickham. She's asked to do a lot more when Kahleah Copper is not in the lineup. I mean, you can rely on those players to do that in a pinch. That should help with when they're back to their deemed role that they were brought into the roster, the entire rotation being built out off of. That should make that depth now a strength. And having those players have that experience and building that chemistry also gives you a template for maybe lineups that you maybe would not have tried if you had your big three to start the season. You can kind of learn a little bit about yourself from these moments where you don't have your entire roster intact.
Well, and Nate said something yesterday. I don't remember if it was in the pregame or postgame availability, but he talked about, everyone on the team knows their role and they know who the stars are on the team and they just have to go out, be productive and do their job. And when you have a team constructed like that and everyone's bought in, it's going to be really hard to beat a team like that. When the big three is doing their job and everyone else is coming in and filling in the gaps, it becomes a really, really difficult team to beat. And so, I'm excited to see how the minutes shift, but I think that this time right now without Ka and without Mack is really great because all these guards are kind of trying out for those last 20 to 30 minutes that are available for those guards. And so I think it's going to end up, suiting the Mercury extremely well come 8 to 9 weeks from now. And they're, everyone's asking us about the bench and the depth of the team. We're going to point to these weeks and how they created a solid bench for the team.
Yeah, all of a sudden, those conversations about who's playing for this team outside of the big three and whatnot, the relevance of those conversations it takes a significant hit. And that's why I caution with all of these conversations, don't say it in a negative way. Just kind of wait for things to play out or do some research on it. Just because you don't know these players' names don't mean that they can't have impact in respect to the way that this team in particular is built. And because of that, the reasons why we're seeing now doesn't surprise me. Yeah. They had players that had specific things that they were good at. And again, when you have a big three construct, you don't need a bunch of players that do everything. You need specific roles to be filled that complement the way that the big three play on offense, but also help to build out the system in the way in which Nate wants to play, not just offensively, because this team is very much aligned with the defensive end as well. So we're starting to see the brilliance of the roster and the way it was built out play out through these first two games already. And I think the biggest indicator of that is the ways in which we've seen multiple role players step up through these first two games. They don't get to this 2-0 start in the ways in which they've done so without those role players stepping up. And I don't think that anyone has stepped up in a way that they can't sustain in some capacity.
Dylan AZ, what's possible when you play defense and rebound and at least give effort? Something that's been missing for years on this team. This is a sentiment that I've seen from a couple of people over the last 24 hours. And I just wonder if all of them were asleep when Natasha Cloud was on the team.
Yeah. If you're talking about comprehensively, yes, they left more to be desired on the rebounding part of things, but defensively, they weren't bad last season.
I didn't think
so.
Which
we talked about. The numbers are the numbers, but the numbers also include when they gave up rebounds, the offensive rebounds. They were good as an initial stop team. They had scheme versatility. They had personnel to defend well. But it's when you, first of all, are playing hurt, when you're without Brittany Griner, and now you're forced. It's not an asset. It's not an in addition to. You're forced to have to cross-match with Natasha Cloud, guarding players like Cheyenne Parker, guarding players like Tina Charles. It's different when she's forced to do that versus when she can do that as a layer to a scheme. And that's the space that they were in to start the season. Who's got to guard Asia Wilson? We don't have BG roaming around, so Tosh, can you do this for us? And her being a dog that she is, of course, no problem. I'll go and get it done. Go and get stops, show effort.
Blocking shots.
But when you're doing that and it's not an in addition to, it's your end-all, be-all, if you have to cross-match like that, that puts you in a position to where now, if she guards her well, that's cool, but what about when it comes to rebounding? There's only so much that a smaller guard can do against someone like Asia Wilson, who's one of the best rebounders the league has ever seen. And you extract that from against the Aces and you copy and paste it across the rest of the season. That kind of speaks to where they were last season on the defensive end. Not bad as a team defensively, but as far as rebounding goes, that's where a lot of their struggles kind of came into play.
As we look ahead to the Mystics and revisiting the Storm, what do you think the keys for the Mercury? I think winning the rematch against the Storm would be a huge confidence booster against this team or for this team. But obviously, it's going to be a difficult task at hand. You're on the Storm's home territory. I believe this is the Storm's home opener as well. So they're going to come out with an extra chip on their shoulder to win, especially after the way Game 1 went here in Phoenix. What do you think the keys for this game in particular versus the Storm on Friday are?
Taking care of the basketball first and foremost before anything else. The turnovers, I think they had 17 in the first game. That can't happen. Because that's a team that feasts off of those turnovers. That's a team that was league tops in terms of points off of turnovers the season before, and also in volume of turnovers forced because of their defense. The same type of versatility and activity and IQ that we speak to with the Mercury, the Storm have that equally, if not even more so, because they have multiple players that have already spent time on an all-defensive team in some capacity. So, not playing to their strength, which is their defense and their ability to turn defense into points on the board because of the activity. Taking that portion off of it and forcing them to also in turn play in half court because you're scoring the ball as much as you are. That's the kind of template for success that they saw against the Storm in Game 1. Also continuing to defend without fouling, but defend to scheme as well. So not sending them to the free throw line where there's easy opportunities to score, obviously score with the clock stop and keep their defense set, which we spoke to is their strength, but also making sure that you're forcing them to play a style of basketball that's uncomfortable to them. So if the Storm have to take 20 to 25 3-point shots, that's not something they necessarily want to do because they don't really have the personnel to be efficient there. They would much rather be scoring in the paint, from the mid-range, and from the free throw line. And at the rim, even more so than anything else. Continue to take those things away. And obviously with Monique doing a better job of not allowing Skylar to get to the free throw line, I think she'll apply the lessons learned through these first 2 games there. And I think the rest of the defense around them, with now 2 games under their belt together, will be more effective.
Well, and do you think being on the road, we've seen them hit some pretty big shots through the first 2 games. Do you think being on the road kind of changes that? Or do you think this team is able to kind of adjust and reassess on the road to be just as successful, specifically shooting the 3 as a team?
I don't, because think about who's taking those shots. If it's Satou, why would you ever worry about Satou taking shots? If it's Sammy, why would you ever worry about Sammy taking shots? Exactly. Nothing. There's no scenario that is foreign to Sammy on the basketball court. Same thing with Satou. And obviously Alyssa won't be shooting threes, but if you got the ball in her hands and she's taking shots or has the ball in her hands to make decisions in meaningful moments, it doesn't get better across the league. There are players that might be as good there, but in terms of the efficiency of the decision making, she's literally a computer. And we saw her compute and take everything that the Sparks were trying to do in last night's game and flip that into an advantage for them time and time again. So whether she's literally taking the shots or she's just setting the table for the shot quality to come, I would not worry about it at all.
I think we need to have a AT nickname tracker. We've used the engine. I called her the washing machine yesterday because she was putting everybody in a spin cycle. And does. And now, what did you just call her? A computer.
A computer, yeah.
I think we got to have a list compiled so that, we can give the people what they want. We can give them Die Hard merch with all of AT's nicknames on it.
Call it the A-list.
Ooh.
I like it.
Okay, period.
I like it.
Noah, are you listening to this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that this is, getting to the people it needs to be to. What is up to everybody in the chat, though? Thank you all for joining us today. Kobe, Home S. This is the second time I've seen Home S in the chat for the Mercury show. So huge shouts to you for joining. Dylan AZ, I know I was giving you crap about the Tosh Cloud, but it's just all love here on this show. And I just want to make sure you hadn't forgot about what was important last season, because I can never forget. I'm still at the restaurant, so, I just want to make sure y'all had not forgot. Hyperbolic Little Lee Totes, the A-team, she likes the comment. They like the comment, so I would hate to misgender, but huge shouts to all of you guys for being in the chat. Be sure to leave a like, 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, and while we're at it, become a diehard. It's the first link down in the little description right below. I believe it's $48 for the year right now, cheaper than a cup of coffee a month. Like, come on, you guys. I don't come all this way and give you all this diehard exclusive content. Probably going to lose my WNBA Fantasy League draft. You can't be a part of any of that if you're not a part of the diehard membership team. So click that first link, get your free t-shirt, your membership card, and access to diehard Discord Lounge so you can harass me and Stephen way, way, way too much. The not so little engine that could. And while we're talking about Alyssa, there's a video floating around on the internet of an injury. And I hate using that word because we don't know, anything really about what exactly has occurred to AT's wrist. But it's obviously concerning. And when we speak to the way this team operates, Alyssa is extremely, extremely important to their continuity from game to game. And from even quarter to quarter. And yesterday, at halftime, the Mercury were down, first deficit of the season. And who was the person that's sparking a light under the Mercury's rear end to,
no pun intended,
to get the squad back in the game? It's AT. So, I don't want to speculate too much about the injury, but I am hopeful that it doesn't affect the roster too much here, especially without Ka and Mack in the beginning of the season.
I mean, the injury happened, I believe it was in the third quarter.
Yeah.
She came back in the fourth quarter.
And is shooting left-handed with the hand that was just looking, I'm going to just say it looks broken if you look at the video that is going around. Granted, I am not breaking any news that Alyssa Thomas broke her wrist. So do not reiterate that information as if it is true. I'm saying that is what it appeared to be.
I'm not worried about it. 8 points, an assist, 3 for 3 from the field, 2 for 2 from the free throw line. All types of stops and activity on defense.
What more do you want?
What are we talking about? She was fine. She was literally laughing. I watched her walk back from the locker room. She went back, got it checked out, whatever. She was fine. She came back to the locker room.
And she's like, haha, look
Kahleah
at my
Copper
wrist.
is looking like, what's going on? And Coach Joyner's looking like, you good? And she starts laughing. She literally started laughing. She was like, oh, this little thing, yeah, I'm good. There ain't no problem. I'm here. I'm locked in. And proceeds to check in about a minute and some change into the fourth quarter. Plays the final 9 minutes and 6 seconds. And did what I said she did. 8 points, 1 assist, 2 for 2 from the free throw line, and 3 for 3 from the field. There's nothing to worry about there, I don't imagine.
Well, that gives me a lot of confidence, and I hope it does the same for all of you, because I know a lot of people, that clip has been floating around, and I feel like inciting a lot of people with anxiety for good reason. I think, again, she is so important to this team. She is the piece that makes everything work together. And so, it would be pretty awful for the team if she went down, but the little engine that could is, I think, just fine.
She's fine. I don't even like the little engine that could, because there's nothing little about her. And there's nothing that could about her. She is. It's very definite.
The engine that does.
Everything that, yes. Yeah. The big engine that does. Well, add that to the A-list.
As we look to the rest of the schedule over the weekend, they had to see the Mystics for the first time this season. The Mystics have had a start to the season that I feel like a lot of people weren't expecting. If you watch college basketball, you probably were expecting it, because Sonia Citron truthers are everywhere, and you got one of them staring at you right now on the camera. But then they also got, obviously, Kiki Ariafen, who you've been listening to me literally complain about how is she not higher on these draft mocks for the last full calendar year that I've been yelling about this. And so I feel like a lot of people were sleeping on the what the Mystics could be, and they're kind of waking up to what is happening in DC. And so, they're headed to Phoenix on Sunday. Brittany Sykes is leading a hell of a team right now. And do you feel like the keys to that game are similar to that of the game against the Seattle Storm?
No, it's different. It's different because they have a completely different team. For the ways in which I talked about Seattle not necessarily being the best 3-point shooting team, they have players that can take and knock down threes, and at multiple positions, at the guard group, in the wing group, and in the front court. So that puts a different demand on your defense, and you can't guard the Mystics the same way that you guard the Seattle Storm, because that'll be a losing effort. And speaking to the Mystics though, everything starts with them on the defensive end of the floor. And I want to take some time to shout out new head coach Sydney Johnson. The stamping identity this early on. You got the injury to Georgia A. Moore, and that could just completely derail and throw everything off script if you allow it to. Obviously, you take a hit in some capacity when you don't have your top overall or one of your top overall picks in the draft available for you. That's tough to deal with, but when you have an identity, that allows for you to still uphold some of the principles and whatnot that you want to establish early on. I had the chance to talk with Coach Sydney Johnson and Brittany Sykes during training camp, and both of those two spoke to defense first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And I think I was in the middle of asking Brittany about archetypes and dynamics specific to her style of defense. She spoke to that, but she also made sure to let it be known that she wasn't alone in being able to defend on the perimeter this season in ways in which it maybe felt or looked like she was last season. And look no further than Sonia Syndrome and everything and all of the ways in which she goes about getting after it on the defensive end of the floor. Also mentioned Suge Sutton. Suge has been getting after it this season. There's a certain type of activity. Add Jay Milburn to that mix as well. They've just been getting after it with their defense, and it's been really fun to watch. It's been really fun to see the ways in which Coach Johnson wants them to operate, surface, and sustain in the ways in which it has. No one would have had them going 2-1 to start the season.
Except Erika.
Except maybe Erika. except maybe Erika.
I was delusional about the Mystics like a month and a half ago. I say it's my household East Coast team. You know, don't let the Wings fans hear that.
I hear you. Well, also in addition to the guard group, they also have a very versatile front court group. Aaliyah Edwards obviously has been out, but everything that they've been doing with Kiki Iriafen, they might have multiple Rookie of the Year candidates. Might not necessarily win it per se, but they might have multiple candidates. And that's crazy to even fathom hearing multiple, considering Georgia Amore is not in that mix at all. Like the embarrassment of rookie riches that Coach Sidney Johnson has in his first season and the ways in which they've bought into his style of play and the defensive end of the floor, the Mercury are gonna have to be sharp with their offensive process, because if you're turning the ball over, these young kids are going to be taken off. And even if it's not one of the young kids, even if it's Brittany Sykes, you know she loves to get after it defensively. She doesn't care about who she's guarding. She's just going to get the job done. That can make for some tough sledding in terms of the flows of the game. So they have to be sharp with the turnover part in particular against the Mystics.
Well, and I feel like when you're playing teams that are rookie heavy in particular, they play with a I have nothing to lose chip on their shoulder. And I think that's why the Mystics are 2-1 right now, because they don't have anything to lose. They know they were underestimated. And if they can make the playoffs, everyone will be looking at them like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah. I don't know if the playoffs are in their cards, but you start off the season 2-1, that naturally puts you in that conversation, especially considering the season for the W is only 44 games.
Yeah.
So getting off to a start in comparison to how other teams have started gives you an opportunity, and that's all you can ask for as a competitor. They've put themselves in that position, and I'm curious to see where they take it going forward.
It's okay, though, y'all. The Mercury are going to correct that record to be, something that it ain't right now, which is going to have extra loss in it. You know what I mean? But is there anything I feel like there's something I'm forgetting that is like major, and you are going to correct me right now before we get out of here.
I mean, we talked about Kid. We've talked about Musa a little bit. We'll have some more content coming out on our social media page over the next handful of hours, pretty much spaced out throughout the day. I had a chance to talk with Sky assistant coach Rena Wakama, obviously spearheading everything that the Nigerian women's national team did over the summer in the Olympics. Obviously, she had Musa on her team. So I just had some opportunity to talk with her about what she saw in her potential, what she was able to bring to that team, and what she kind of expects for her to bring to the W, and what makes her such a unique basketball player. So be on the lookout for those. Those will be out, like I said, spaced out throughout the day between today and then obviously early tomorrow before tomorrow's game. So get to learn a lot about Musa. I think she's going to play a significant role in the rotation for the Mercury down the line, giving them a change of pace player. And I think that she's also someone that has a whole lot more skill than maybe conversations are suggesting she does on the offensive end. Being able to shoot, being able to space it a little bit, being able to be a good passer, offensive rebounds, those blue-collar type of efforts that, again, specific to skills you need to complement a big three roster construct, she brings those in spades.
It feels like if you can shoot three-pointers, you can get you a spot on the Phoenix Mercury right now.
I mean, if you shoot threes and play defense, though, don't forget about that part.
You're right.
For every bit as much as Nate talks about wanting to shoot threes, he's a defensive-minded coach. So if you check off those two boxes, we got a spot for you.
You know what I've really been seeing over the last for 24 hours only is like the tone has really shifted around Nate Tibbetts, and I'm shocked, right? You know?
Yeah, and who would have thunk? Who would have guessed it?
And I do understand why everyone had their.
I don't.
But
I do.
That
not.
is my guy, and I'm gonna spend the rest of my days defending that man. I just know it, and so hats off to girl dad Nate Tibbetts. He's done a fantastic job through the first two games of the season, and I feel like with the roster he had last year and the injuries they had, I feel like he still did a fantastic job in his first year in a head coaching position in the WNBA, which is a completely different ball game from what he's been coaching in the past.
Yeah, you get thrown into the fire with a team that has two all-time greats and have championship aspirations. Even if they made it to the conference, the second round of the conference finals, it wouldn't have amounted to what the expectations were.
Correct. Yeah.
So it was in that respect in particular, in terms of result of the season, even if they did win 29, 30 games and lost in the first round or second round, people would have said they left more to be desired. So keep that in mind when you're talking about Nate, because one thing he did last season was, for one, as a brand new head coach to a brand new league, all of this newness, brand new ownership, all of this newness, to have gotten a buy-in from Kahleah Copper in particular, it's not easy to, it's not necessarily not speaking to Kahleah, but for a brand new head coach, it's not easy to get buy-in from a franchise player that you're brand new to a league to in the quick fashion in which he did. By the first day of training camp, they were already barking at each other in a complimentary way and setting that tone for the culture that he was looking to establish. You look at the growth of that relationship, apply that to the tone that they set last season in terms of Nate playing the style and bringing some new philosophies to it, and now look at where they are this season and what they're doing with Kahleah not involved in the lineup right now. That says everything. It says everything.
Well, and I think to your exact same point, he also kind of changed Kahleah's game almost entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's where the buy-in came from.
Right. And so, yeah, it's been really impressive what he's been able to get out of his team. Mm-hmm. And we'll continue to see that come together. And yes, Andy Bryant is correct. Girl Dad Defender Erika L. Day. Bookmark it. I've been doing it for a whole season, and it feels like a half already with what's happened in the 5 days that the WNBA has been going on.
But to your point, though, you talk about everything last season with Kahleah, the shift in her shot profile that we've spoken to a lot since last season and obviously early this season. Doesn't have to do that as detailed as he did last season because that foundation has already been laid. She knows what to expect. Now he's doing the same thing with Satou Sabally. Mm-hmm. And you see the efficiency and the impact of her game in these first two games with the Mercury. 25 plus in both. The scoring impact has been there. The defensive activity has been there. As a head coach, again, brand new to a league, brand new to this franchise in particular with so much newness in terms of players, the roster turnover from last season to this season. It's not easy to establish a foundation for an identity, have a roster built out to that, set that tone in training camp, and for all of the players that are in your rotation to align with it in the ways in which they have this season through just 2 games. And to see what they look like in the preseason compared to, it's literally been like 10 days since those preseason games took place. And now, that doesn't happen in this expedited fashion without him setting the tone. So shout out to Nate for the leadership. Shout out to his coaching staff as well for upholding all of those principles that they need for success. And I think their routes to success are very clear for all of the players. There's no ambiguity in terms of role, in terms of what's being asked from them, and what it looks like when they do it compared to what it looks like when they don't do it.
Well, on that note, is there anything we've forgotten to mention at this point?
Double checking my notes real quick. I would just make sure to keep an eye on Laksa, Kit, and the ability for her to add more lineup versatility to everything that Nate is wanting to do. So if you look at the Mercury as a roster, you're imagining they're gonna have one of their shooters on the court. They're kind of snipers, if you will, just dub them as snipers to identify them as that. Lexi Hill, obviously Sammy Whitcomb are all-time great in that, and Khadijah Laksa. That's what you want. You want to have multiple options to where it's not just leaning on 1 or 2 players for specific things. If you can have multiple players that do these things, that's what makes a rotation great. And that's what makes that adage that everybody uses, strength in numbers, literally be a strength and honestly be an advantage that you have. Because say someone gets in foul trouble, or even worse, say someone gets hurt. Do you lose your identity, or do you lose the hit to the style of play that you want to because someone's not in the lineup? Or are you able to be adaptable because of your versatility? And I think that last night we saw that. We saw Sammy didn't necessarily have the best 3-point shooting game. Lexi Hill comes in, knocks down a couple of shots, gets to the paint, and plays in the ways in which they need her to defensively as well. Kit comes in and does the same thing, playing a pass away from Satou, playing a pass away from Alyssa, playing to the second side, and knocking down 3-point shots in all of those respects. That's what you need to be a successful team. And if you're looking at the things that the Aces have done over the last couple of years, the things that the Liberty and the Lynx have done the last couple of seasons, that's what you need relative to the Mercury context, and I think they're getting there.
Well, period. I'm just as optimistic as I was a week ago, and I didn't know if that would be the case. So, Mercury 2-0. I hope the next time we talk, Mercury 4-0.
I don't think it's out the realm of possibility.
I don't either. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like this team is riding a high right now that can be ridden for kind of a little while. And, when you're playing to the level that they're playing with the people that you're playing with, and you've got to come up with the rookies that they've got right now, I feel like not a lot is counting against the Mercury right now.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it comes back to everybody being bought in on the defensive end of the floor and the offense kind of coming along in this process on a game-by-game basis as they build more time out underneath at practice with one another. So keep an eye out for their defense and the efforts within that.
Well, before we get out of here, I do have some breaking news. You guys have asked for a lot more WNBA coverage, and, we wanted to make sure we got that to you. All City delivered. So I just want to make sure you guys all know there's a new show. DLLS Wings show starts in literally 2 hours. So it's a big day in All City. They had a CHGO Sky show this morning, PHNX Mercury right now, and then DLLS Wings. It's a big, big day for WNBA coverage everywhere. I mean, I don't know anyone that's doing it like us, and we're really excited to be bringing this new show to you guys. So be sure to tap in with all of us over at 2 o'clock Phoenix time for the DLLS Wing show today for the very first episode. But without further ado, Stephen, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at StephenPG3, StephenPG3. Always talking a whole lot of Mercury basketball. A lot of opportunities to talk with coaches and players from practice and obviously at games. So tap in there. We got a lot more coverage, especially on the diehard side, to come over the next couple of weeks and months throughout the season. Make sure you continue to tune in with us. We appreciate y'all.
Yeah, and then you can follow me over on Twitter at Erika Lee Day, and that's Erika with a K. You can follow us both together at PHNX_Mercury, where we will keep you up to date on everything to do with the Phoenix Mercury. And honestly, just have a great time keeping up with the Girl Dad Counter, AT nicknames, Satou puns. The list just goes on and on with the amount of fun we have over on that Twitter account. So be sure to follow us over there, and we will tap in with you guys next week. Thank you.
We all silly like the mayor.